or is it going to be things where you're observing match play or whatever? So in terms of measuring, I have to identify and verify. Okay, I've got to identify what is it. I'm looking forehand technical. Okay, I have to identify what it is, and I have to verify it. I'm going to verify it by observing, or it could be I do a test on tactics and see if they're knowledgeable about it. Or it could be simple things like, you know, you might have competencies on knowing the rules. But again, you got to identify it and verify it. You got to go into what is the criteria. Is it quantity versus quality? That's always a big debate. With parents, when you start getting into quality, you get into trouble. So it used to be, you move to the 5:30 group if you pay Craig a lot of money. We know that story, right? You get to move to the group because you take private lessons. And Lord knows if you take private lessons from Kirk Anderson, it's going to be the right thing, right, Kirk? And I'm going to let you move to the 5:30 group. But it can't, you know, it can't be that. So we're going to talk later about technical and tactical and the difficulty of writing competencies that parents can understand from technique, and also the difficulty when parents start talking technique to their children, which starts opening up a whole other can of worms. So the conditions, is it a closed or open environment? So again, am I feeding you 20 balls to see if you can hit them cross court? Anyone familiar with the GRIPS program? Really good program. It's like karate belts. Anyone familiar with it? It's for tennis, different color grips. Really cool concept. But they do a lot of feeding. It's a lot of closed environment things. Closed is generally easier. Open environment would be, am I watching them play matches? And that's generally subjective. Some can be objective. But again, what is the condition? Closed or open? I mentioned hand racket feed versus cooperative. I mentioned Mike Beck rallying with a 7-year-old. Or is it going to be a ball being fed hand or racket? Student to coach instructor, same thing I said. You know, are they rallying together as kids? Or is it the pro? Always interesting, isn't it? Because yellow ball, oh man, I hit with a kid, they can play yellow ball. And then you put them up with another kid, is their level, and you're like, oh my God, this is the worst thing I've ever seen. And I'm great at hitting a nice flat ball, level trajectory, well, not much arc. And the kids look great. The next thing you know, this starts happening, and their strokes go out the window, right? This is extremely important to understand, and we'll go over it later, but ultimately it's got to be in a game situation. You know, you can close the environment all you want, but it needs to be where it's real and live. And then private versus group, and let's put this down. You know, is it a private lesson, or is it going to be one-on-one? Is it going to be in a group situation where you're going to observe it? And then some of the other ones we'll talk about is, you know, is it going to be you sitting with your staff at lunchtime at a meeting? Or are you out there with a clipboard? And we do both. Because a lot of times when we do numbers and all, we want it on the clipboard. If it is talking about anything to do with like observing play, then we'll usually do that inside at a staff meeting. So taking a closer look, how many of you have seen the USDA competency videos that live online? About half of you have. Kirk, you have, really? Did anybody know on the bottom left there's a thing that says large group instruction? I don't think Kirk, most of them know that's there. If you go back, that's about 5 coach ed sessions at your club worth of information on the bottom left. We shot it in College Park. The competencies are wonderful, but we also did a thing on group instruction that's actually not competency that's on there. So next time you look at it, check it out, because I think it's worthy of taking a look. But anyway, these, if you go to USDA.com, we've changed the front page, and just plug in on the search, or you can even Google search it, USDA 10 and under competencies. This is what's really the high end, okay, for kids. And I want to show you some samples. So this would be red backhand footwork. Hopefully this is going to play. That little kid had only played a little over a year. You probably wouldn't believe me, would you? He was 6. He was unbelievable. That was shot at College Park. So what is the environment if we're going to grade that Kid, is that an open or closed environment with that young boy? Closed environment, right? And so he may look like a hero because she's tossing it perfectly to him, right? But when he plays, does he own those stances? So ultimately, you'd have to grade him if he owns it in a live situation that would be open. So here's how orange changes.
Backhand footwork. Backhand footwork on the red court was focused on learning how to correctly use the square and semi-open stances. The footwork skills that need to be mastered on the orange court include continued refinement and development of the square, semi-open, and now the open stance. The player learns to move diagonally to the court. They are also introduced to the backward diagonal movement. The player also needs to begin to develop the ability to increase the load in the lower body in all three stances. At this point, added emphasis should be placed on recovery footwork. Based on the player's distance from the middle of the court, the player should utilize the shuffle if fairly close to center. The player has to cover more ground. The first recovery step should be the crossover.
I apologize. I didn't bring my portable Bluetooth speaker with me, so I just realized I can stick the microphone there and you could actually hear it better. Y'all probably don't know it, but there's an Athens, Georgia girl in that video. That was actually Mike Beck's daughter that did some of that. She didn't make the cut for everything, but her backhand footwork got snuck in there. So this is green.
Backhand footwork. Now that the court is bigger and the ball is bouncing faster and higher, the player's use of all three stances at the appropriate time is very important. In order to establish a square stance or a semi-open stance for more offensive shot selection, the player will have to time their split step correctly and utilize a quick first step to the ball. The player should also learn how to optimize their footwork with the crossover step and the bounce step. It's also very important for the player to load correctly when he or she does have to hit an open stance shot out of the corner or from a defensive position. The player should understand that power should come from the load and unit term, not from increasing the size of their swing. At this level, efficient diagonal movement should be emphasized so that the player is able to optimize their work position.
So you see the buildup in the competency, right, from red to orange to green. And look, I say this all the time, whether I work for the USDA or don't. People can rip on the USDA, but we put something out there and stuck our neck out, and people can throw darts at it. I think it's pretty cool. But as with everything, no one's going to agree with everything. There's going to be some disagreement, but I think it's a great tool to use. But again, all these competencies are like at the top end. What should be very best red should be able to do the very best orange. And so the complaint we get is it's too advanced. So today, I'm going to talk about the levels below that as well, so we can bring that down into more practical application. One thing that's really cool, I was at College Park last week doing another ESPTA 10 and under conference, Mid-Atlantic section, where we filmed this. And it was pretty cool. The girl on there in green who's really good, Haley, is now, obviously older. It was 2 years ago, last August, we shot it. But it's pretty cool watching her now because she struggled a little bit in her first year playing yellow, but she looks the same that she did. And she did some orange and some green with us, and she was competent, and those competencies carried over. She had a dip when she went to yellow, but she's really attacking in the midcourt again, and it's really cool to watch her development. She's one of the best 12-year-olds in the country, moving up now. All right, so in terms of, sorry, I forgot to get the mic on. In terms of developing your own, so what we want to look at first is what are your competency categories, the components, and the skills. And we're going to break this down. I go through PowerPoint training. Dave Ritter used to be in Kirk Anderson's department. And when I first did this one at the PTR, he absolutely shredded me afterwards, Kirk. I mean, it was brutal. He's like, you did everything wrong from the class and all that. So I have a nice handout, because Dave told me I need to do this. And I changed my slides where you can actually not have to, look up there with magnifying glasses. It's actually on your sheet. But we're going to go through this, and you're going to write on here your tactics, your technique areas, your categories, components, all that stuff. And we're going to build this today, okay? So when you're developing your own, how are you going to measure? Again, are you going to do it in clinic? Are you going to do it around the round table, a combination of? You're going to make notes at tournaments? How are you going to measure? How will you publish and how often? And I can tell you, we did competencies like 15 years ago with our best kids. And when I was talking about earlier, we didn't do it with our younger ones. But we did it like 3 times over 6 weeks and quit doing it because it was so extensive. It was the biggest pain in the butt with the 45 kids in our performance group. So you got to make a decision how often and how you're going to publish. You're going to email it to the parents, give it to just the kid, talk to the parents about it. Who's the audience is crucial. You've got to make a decision. Are you going to write 2 sets of competencies? So, here, I think Bill said everybody got these developing tennis players. I would refer to this as internal. Now, in our marketing terminology, it's consumer facing. I learned that one, Kurt, the other day. Consumer facing. So if this was the case and you post this on your wall, here's the problem. Parents see that. This is pretty heavy stuff. So you have to educate them, get them more sophisticated. But this to me is going to be more internal. And then what I publish to the parents could be abbreviated as synopsis or whatever, but I think this is really important. So as I mentioned before, we would have a lot of talk internally, but we didn't do a good job of publishing externally. So we would need to write 2 different types of competencies. All right, so the first thing I want to go over is these different components, and they're different countries, and I just give them country 1, country 2, and all that. And in your book, you can kind of filter through it. We're going to walk through this after that, but you've got to decide what your components are. So what are the areas you're going to grade? Tactical, technical, physical, psychological. This is a sample of one country. Another country, the French that I have an example of, they do more than this, but they categorize technical, tactical. Another one, physical, during game play, technical and tactical. And then socially, competitively. And then this one right here, DTP, developing tennis players. This one just mentioned. These would be the categories as athletic development, technical development, movement, psychological. You can read it. Reading is fundamental. I would probably bucket some of those if I did it for parents and not have 7 different ones. USA player development, some of you have heard this before, heavily influenced by Jose Garris, but categorize hands to be technical. Feet, footwork, eyes and mind would be more tactical. Ball recognition, decision making, those kind of things. All right, ITF basic competencies, and this is, I think, I got this from their Play and Stay book, an older book. Technical, tactical, enjoyment, and scoring. I thought that was interesting. So, this is free kitty litter here. Free samples. You can pull these out, okay? I've got at the very bottom of page 1 a summary, because you're going to have to go back in and figure this out. And I didn't change it on there. I apologize. I have in the middle USTA PDHPP. It's a heck of an acronym. Progressive Development of a High Performance Player poster. And had to throw that acronym in. But anyway, if you remember that poster, I know Julio had it on his wall at Jackson, Mississippi, right? It was a poster we put out like 10 years ago or something. What we basically did was took the left side of that poster, that's sort of foundational stage, and blew it up into this. Okay, it's pretty cool. Grace Min is on there. I think Donald Young and maybe the Sangren kid, but anyway, a very young Grace Min with a 25-inch racket. But anyway, I didn't correct that. That was my bad. So that's the old one in there. But anyway, if you look on the bottom of that, that's a little summary. Because now what we're going to do is figure out ours. So what I want you to do, if you flip the page over to page 3, it says your competency categories at the bottom. So what I want you to do, and just humor me, even if you already have yours, if you can write it down, or maybe if you're thinking about making a change, and list the areas you'd grade. Okay, your competency categories. You can just take a moment to do that. So again, on page 3, it's blank, the very bottom. And then if you look at page 1 at the bottom, a good, not cheat sheet, but just something to reference is how there's some different categories there. Like, do you think enjoyment should be on there? Social, competitive. Those are a little different. Most people would agree technical, tactical. But take a moment and write down the areas, this is 10 and under, that you would use for skills and competencies. Anyone want to share? Sharing is good. Mr. Mike, question, are you going to share with us?
I was going to share. I just did the tactical, technical, and physical skills. I left out some of the others because I didn't think they were necessarily in line with what you do to evaluate it.
So you did 3 buckets.
3 buckets. Yeah.
So he said technical, tactical, and physical skills. Anybody else? Yes.
I think maturity and emotion, big.
Yep, maturity and emotion. Yep. Would that be a subjective or objective grade that you would have to give? That's a tough one, isn't it?
Yeah.
I'm going to tell the parent I'm grading your child emotionally on a scale of 1 to 10. It's a tough one, isn't it? But it's really, really important. Like, for example, when kids play, we talk about this all the time. You have a 7-year-old who's at a play day at your club in-house, and they're crying a lot. That kid should never play junior team tennis around town until they can get that under control, you know? And so would crying be one of the, areas in there that's what you got to figure out. But I think it's super important, yep. Because I think we really miss a lot of times we determine if kids are ready to compete solely by serve, rally, score. Excellent. Anyone else? Yes?
Competitive frequency, just trying to measure, and encourage them to play more competitively as far as tournaments goes, and actually put more validity to that as opposed to just their development.
Okay. So competitive frequency, and you talked about how often playing tournaments. Can we throw in competing at your club too for play days would be great. Yep. And then also the team tennis part if you have it in your area, absolutely. And what we want, I think all of us as frequent players, it doesn't do any good to have a bunch of kids that come out for 6 weeks of clinic, put good money in our pocket and leave, and we get a ton of them doing that, we make good money. I think we'd all rather have the frequency. Excellent. Anyone else want to share maybe a single category you have that is different? Yes?
About like growth, like physical maturation.
Yeah, absolutely. So she mentioned growth, physical maturation, so it could be the G&D category, growth and development, right? All right, so you've got that, and you're going to have to build upon that, all right? Not that I'm going to pick on everybody, but I do want you to write this down and humor me, even if you already have them, because everyone's going to think differently. All right, so we're going to move on to tactical. And I picked tactical and technical, and some people call technical mechanical or whatever, but they're pretty universal categories, I think. And so what I wanted to do, back again to your sheets, I think this first part, I only put the French tactical part down. Technical part. Yeah, I don't have this in your resource, but on page 4, we do have the French serve for technical. These next ones comes from the tactical part. So I wanted you to see the buildup of how they go multiple levels of red to orange to green. So this is on the mini court. So this is even smaller than a 36 by 18. So consistently serving the court from the baseline, service line if we are using the court. So this is about as simple can be. It was like an open box. This is being consistent by serving diagonally, which would be the next level of red. And so what they're talking about, the first level is get it in anywhere in the box, either box. And there's a number of countries that do not play 2 boxes. They play both together. There are several countries that do that. When I say that, they compete, they start that way, then they move to this, all right? So this is the next level, is just to be able to serve diagonally, okay? Then once we go to orange tactical, you can see how it gets kind of heavy. First serve, limit the opponent or winning the point by, here we go, different speeds and exploiting hitting to the weakness, okay? So look at how it changes to green. We obviously have even more writing. So limit the opponent again, win the point. So speeds and acceleration, exploiting the weakness and or moving the opponent. Then we talk about trajectories and varying effects and spins. Effects is interesting. It's an interesting translation on effects. And then second serve, now we added this. Neutralized by exploiting weakness using effects and spins. So in orange, they weren't talking about the second serve. Then they started talking about the green. So again, just want you to see under tactical some different approaches. So Canada, first level of red. I believe this is in your guide. Yes, that's on page 1. The bronze, so they have, I think, 3 levels. And actually, the Canadian stuff you can access online. They call it progressive tennis. You can Google search, find a lot of stuff. And I think you can Google search progressive tennis half-court manual. And it's pretty cool stuff. I got this through Wayne Elderton, who does most of the coach ed in Canada, but I also found this online as well. So pretty cool stuff. It's free, and you can see. I would consider these. This is not as detailed right here, but most of their stuff is for coaches. I wouldn't consider this external for parents. So anyway, if you look on your sheet, I like this term, cooperative consistency. Sending a slow-paced ball with median mark to a partner. Understand the basic concept of direction and height control. And I didn't mention, this is ground strokes. Understand the basic concept of direction and height control for improved consistency. You can start the ball consistently to begin a rally. Pretty basic for red, right? But we all know that's pretty big for a 6-year-old to be able to do that, right? That's very important, right? So let's go take it to the next level. So we have cooperative consistency, but then we add competitive consistency, pressure through consistency. Interesting on that. I just wanted to show you the delineation. I like those when they describe it. So ITF Basic Tactics is actually one that I pretty much use in our club. Is always, not always, but been our Bible for a while. Is basic tactics, get the stupid ball on the court, move the opponent, maintain a good court position. I like to say play according to position. And then your strengths, exploit their weaknesses. And to me, that's pretty basic when you look at that. Okay, and that's in your writing as well. So now what we want you to do is we want you to list your tactical components. Okay? And so if you look through there, starting from page 1, they show technical and all for Canada. And then I threw in our Petersburg play program, which got some tactics in it. And then if you go, actually I think that was it. Yeah, for tactical. I'm sorry, the rest of those were technical. So anyway, if you could take a moment and just list your categories, tactics. And it's interesting too, because we'll get into the discussion about ball controls, because some people think ball controls are separate than tactics. So anyway, what are your tactical categories? All right, and I'll go actually back through this again, because I think I made a mistake and left this out of the resource. Dave Ritter would be upset with me, Kirk. I'm going to back it up a little bit just so y'all can not cheat, but have some suggestions. So again, ITF basic tactics, consistency, move the opponent, good core position, and playing your strength, exploiting the weakness. And then these were some other areas they talked about. You can see the word consistency used a lot here. They talked about direction and height. Cooperation. Then over here, talk about effects and spins. Mentioned weaknesses. So again, some commonalities here. Orange tactical, again, speeds. Exploiting weakness, serving diagonally, that would be direction. All right, so just some ideas. So if you can spend a minute on listing your tactical categories. All right, anyone want to share? is caring.
That's such a good phrase, isn't it?
Any, you want to throw it out?
Got consistency with directional intent to a half of the court. Control the ball shape to improve court positioning. Using the spins and speeds to improve court positioning.
Yeah. Excellent. I hope y'all can hear that. Anyone else? No? Carol Anderson, you got something back there? Okay. Just check. You're gonna have competencies for Kirk at the house. Being competent with the vacuum cleaner, washing some windows. Anybody else? We're good?
Yeah, for us, since we're not, we break it down based on players that we have, since we don't have a lot of high performance kids, we just keep it real simple for understanding when to rally attack or within.
Okay.
And when we start talking about different heights and stuff like that, they all kind of look against that. So
Yep.
we just keep it real simple too, based on where we're at, identifying what it's going to happen.
Yeah, very good. When to rally, attack, and defend. Is that what you said? Excellent. And that's it'll be kind of in that category of court positioning, right where you are on the court. Yeah, very good. Anybody else? We're good? All right, because we're going to build this thing. So we have our categories. Then we listed tactical. And now we're going to move on to technical. It's interesting when you talk to tennis pros, they love to talk technique. It's such a big deal. And I think some of this may be cultural in America. I'm not so sure, but it's always interesting to me because once we get down that road, people get really excited. So, technical on page 4, it was a different color, and some of it you may strain. I have glasses now and I can actually read small print. Some of you may need glasses, but anyway, on the French serve, some interesting things we have there on technical components. And this is something, I can't remember who gave this to me, it was a translation. But the French are really technical, very technical. And that may be a cultural thing too, I don't know. But anyway, just pointing out some of the things on here that I thought were pretty interesting. A competency is holding the racket at the bottom close to the butt cap, supported by the second. So even younger, just where you hold the racket is a competency. It's a category within technique. Because we all know that's huge on red for kids that choke up and they hit their backhand, they go crosshand, right? And even here on serve, they're listing where the hand should be because we want to get rid of anyone choking up. Usually that means the racket's probably too big. Sometimes it's not too big and they're just doing it to make it easier. So starting position, stance in the same line as the target. Interesting. Continental grip to hammer grip. Which in here did he leave? Staples. I don't know if they're going to put in here. Butch might have the alligator stun grip on here. Anyone knows Butch, he likes to talk about that. Interesting in the translation, no hammer, because it's a term a lot of people would use. Aiming, and then aim to throw position by coordinating the rise of the arms. Swing by protecting the elbow. Anyway, I just find that very interesting. And they also talk about tossing above the head. So then on the next page, we got page 5, a little more detailed again, probably a little bit more for coaches in terms of Canada. I like this little grid they have, just another idea when you do it, and you have little check-off boxes. So simple, the fundamental grip, then they have the setup, impact point, hitting zone, and recovery. So for us, it's grip, preparation, swing path for player development. That's pretty simple, but theirs is a little bit different. You can see they put in red flags, Western grip, red flag, not getting sideways, arm only preparation. But anyway, pretty cool. Just another sample of how they did checkoff boxes, okay? And then if you go over to page 6 on the back side, you can see when they go to orange, they actually do it differently. I'm not so sure if I agree with this, but now it's setup and timing, footwork, racket work, and body work. And same thing, those are bullet points, but you can make them checkoff boxes. And you can see how they do the grids as ground strokes, volleys, serves, and overheads and returns. Okay? So anyway, good stuff. I want to move on and go over a little bit. I work for the USTA, so I've got to make sure we talk about what we do. Have any of you seen this, grips, preparation, and swing path? Has anyone seen this? It's like a little manual. It's like a brochure, actually. Large like a manual, but it's like a 3-fold brochure. But anyway, it's another one where I love it. It gets a lot of conversation going where a lot of people don't don't agree, but they agree with the majority of it, I think. But it's more of just a standard kind of rally ball. We know follow-throughs can vary and all of that, but this is, I think, a pretty darn good resource. And then the next one is the one I showed earlier. Again, another one that I think you have to be careful if you're going to put this on the wall of your pro shop, and a parent looks at that and is like, this is like the Rubik's Cube. I'm in trouble. Why did I get into this sport? But this, again, is, I think, more of a coach piece. But once parents get into it and you have a relationship with them and you educate them, absolutely they can understand this. So when I talk about some of my issues with this, it could be someone walking through your pro shop door going, this is really difficult. But once parents get going for a while, absolutely you can use this as a good roadmap for them. So I just wanted to get a quick example, because you can't read this. I think Dave Ritter proud here. So I pulled these out. This is a real simple progression of red, basic forehand and backhand, grip preparation, swing path. Then on orange, we get more into stances, the grip again. So it may be the grip is going past Eastern a little bit, the shape of the shot, as a term he used earlier. Some people would call it arc or whatever, but the shape and the types of spin. And then when we get to green, very similar again to what you read earlier with the French, talking now about speed and acceleration and changing spin, and hit the ball at the top of the bounce or falling. Okay, so a little different there. That's almost like position. So your program, technical difficulties, please stand by. So what we want to do is get you to pull your book out again, and we want you to list technically what you would grade. Now we don't want you to get too far down the path. This is page 6. So obviously we, ground stroke, serve, return, all that stuff. But what we're talking about is the categories within. So are you a simple person and you just want preparation and path? Do you want to have grips on there? Don't try to, please me and the USTA. I don't care what you write. But think about what you just saw, and now think about the categories that you'd have for technique. I usually have 4. I don't usually do 3, but I'm not saying to do that. But again, you saw 3, 4, 5. Some people love keeping everything into 3s. It makes it easier for them. So just think on it. Technically, and you'd have to fit serve, volley, and grounding. So you want to not have different technical categories for every stroke. You want to have the same buckets. All right, anyone want to share those? Anyone else? Anyone have an aha moment? No? Nobody? No takers? Did anyone put ready position as a category?
I was in the preparation.
Is it preparation? Okay. I think most people would agree. Ready position is universal. Should be in terms of whether you're hitting a volley or that, but I know some people put that. And most of you had something to do with preparation, or did you bag preparation and all of that is swing path? Did most of you have something with preparation? Yes, most of us do? Okay. How many of you listed contact point as a single one? Okay. Because if you notice in there, Canadians had that as well. How many of you had open-ended follow-through or finish? How many of you had that? Okay. All right. Anything else that I didn't mention that anyone had that was different?
I had eye tracking.
Okay. So for technique, so tracking with the eye. Anyone else?
Still like grips.
Grips? Okay. Stance? shape of swing? Yeah. I really like the term shape of swing. I like that term a lot.
I was tracking it, not necessarily visually, with the hands and arms.
Okay.
What do you mean by shape of the swing?
So it could be loop,
Oh, okay.
shallow loop,
Yeah.
big loop,
Okay.
slice motion, the shape.
That's a good term.
I like that term, shaping. It'd actually be a verb. Okay, cool. So here's what we're gonna do now. We're gonna start
Craig.
testing you a little bit. Yes?
I put legs because I get really frustrated with so many of our girls that use their legs. Is that too specific?
No, I think that would just be almost like you saying stance and then saying legs, but it could be more specific than just a stance. Because I think stance, most people think of as loading, you know, and legs could be your split step, your movement to the ball and all that. Yep. So legs, yeah, maybe more like someone saying feet or movement also, yeah.
Well, I guess I was thinking of loading.
Were you thinking of the whole package of
Yeah,
using
well,
the
I was
legs?
just thinking of loading, really.
Okay. Yeah, because I think stance is more of the loading phase, you know, and movement would get into all phases of movement. That's, legs would make me think that, but I get it too, because you could say feet, maybe the getting to the ball, and legs would be the load part. So yeah, whatever, it's interesting when you start thinking about it, because the main thing is that you do it, you stay consistent, and then what you put underneath there. All right, so, measure. What is this? Orange serve. These are competencies I've taken from other sources. Wide, body, or tee. This is the orange serve. Split box into 3 zones, and you have to make 7 of 10. What category would that be for you? Is that a technical category? Tactical, right? Yeah, so that's pretty basic, right? Survey says that would be tactics. Okay, you're counting, you're placing the ball into a specific zone. Doesn't talk about how you got it there. All right, so read this one. It's a hell of a sentence. That's a mouthful for a parent. So what would the survey say on that? What category would you put that in? It's technical, right? How do you think a parent would synchronize upper body mechanics? I think consistent toss from inside of the front leg will be a little easier to sell. But again, with technique, it gets a little tough when you're trying to justify that to a parent who wants to know why their kid's not in the 530 group. All right, so that would be technique. All right, so here's a tough one. Read this and tell me what you think. Some of you can't see that. Judge the depth and direction of the ball effectively. Arrive on balance and use a simple action and contact point. Anyone want to tackle where that would be in their categories?
Just the last part, I'll filter in both. I mean, it should look technical, but then simplify point contact based on shot I'm receiving. Technically, I have to understand to shorten up my stroke in that situation.
Yep. It's tough, but she was talking earlier, someone else mentioned about, you know, with tracking and all, judge the depth and direction of the ball. So we get into that realm. Arrive on balance, could be legs, Sue, you know, could be stance, but arrive on balance. Do you have a sway meter to register balance? I'm joking, but actually, one of the gals I work with says you have to have a meet, you have to measure that. And there is such a thing as a sway meter. Right, a videotape, and if you're using a sway meter, you can mess up. Arrive on balance and use a, what the hell is a simple action? Or is it this and a contact point? So anyway, that to me is survey says, I don't know what the hell that is. That's a bunch of stuff. And I'm doing this to show you that if that was internal language, I think you'd be okay. But trying to sell that to a parent, not happening. And that's totally unfair. There's so much subjectivity involved, right? So here we go. Category: shows independence, packs their own bag for matches and practice, complete a regular warm-up routine, and practice regularly without the coach. Do you think this is important?
Yes.
This is big, right? So where would that fit into your competencies? Because I can tell you, I didn't have any of this stuff in my competence, like right here. But to me, this is unbelievably important. It's also important that you have a ball in your pocket, if you have a pocket, and you come to the line with 2 balls, and you call the score out. And I laugh at that, but that's super important for a 6-year-old, right? So the question is, what category does that go in? In yours, do you have a category for that? Because if your categories are the French one, they just say technical, tactical, I don't know where I'm going to put that in.
Accountability.
Logistical, accountability, anyone else?
Ownership.
What's that? Discipline? Yeah. Ownership, personal responsibility.
Initiative.
And there's no right or wrong to me. The main challenge to you is what category you're going to create. Because this is one where I was like, whoa, I need to be doing this. And we talk about this with the kids, but I never really graded packing your bag at all. And this is like a rule in our program is mom can't carry the bag. Or dad. Kids carry the bag. And they carry the water jug. And mom doesn't go out to the court and set it inside the fence for them. Because you don't look like a brawler when that occurs. So survey says, question mark. Yeah, it's kind of like Brad Gilbert when Roddick started working with him. I don't know if y'all remember this. So Andy, what have y'all been working on? What's the first thing that he said? Do y'all remember what he said? Lose the visor. Y'all remember that? That was hilarious. And you know how Roddick is. I miss him in interviews, especially when he lost. And you don't want to be on the other side of the microphone, but he'd have the best stuff. Anyway, it's all about the visor. You don't look menacing, I think is the term that he used. All right, so again, we're going to grade. I'm going to show some video, and anyone who's seen me present before has probably seen this video before. I'm obsessed with it and dug it out of many hours of footage and have played it all over the country. But we're going to grade off this, all right? So we're going to identify, these are ground strokes, and it's tactical, okay? How are we going to verify? It's going to be verification through observation of play. I don't think you can closed environment tactics. I think tactics you have to observe in open play to verify. So criteria, quality or quantity, got to decide that. Again, I'm trying to use our step-by-step process. Identify, verify criteria, and the conditions. All right, so the conditions is open play. All right, so what I want you to do is take your tactical areas and see if she checks off your boxes. Okay? And we want to talk about that because I'm going to play this at least 2 times. And Mike Barrow's not in the room, so we're not going to get into an argument today. Everyone's going to play nice in the sandbox. When I did this at the PTR conference, it was just classic. We had Mike and the other, they were going at it, and it's exactly what I want, is to get everyone to think. So you grade this. It's the girl on the far side. Just briefly over your list of tactics. 2 6-year-olds playing red ball. So think about your tactics, and does she check off your boxes? Let's do this again. want to take a stab at it? There's no right or wrong, just according to your tactical areas, how would you grade her? You gotta be systematic with this.
On the return, she ran out of action to the forehand, so that's a strength. On the return, she went quite a bit out of the way to the forehand.
Yep. And so she's in, you have, and so in your tactics, you have the category of utilize the strength. Okay, do you have exploits weakness in yours?
I put moving around and consistency, really.
Okay. I'm just trying to get first to what are your categories, and then how did you grade her from there? So you can tell she liked her forehand, right? For sure.
Well, she showed usage of the court, and obviously she worked a good majority of the court. She elevated the ball, she was in trouble, so it's more kind of right shot, right time.
So in terms of playing according to position, is what you're talking about utilizing the court, she played according to position well. This is Paul Wardlaw directionals right here. It's unbelievable if you look at it. And Wardlaw, by the way, is a huge fan of red, orange, green. Yes?
Yeah, she could maintain direction, but she could also change direction.
So she established a pattern, but then broke the pattern as well. She changed direction. Okay? Anybody else in terms of thinking in your categories where she fit in?
The recovery was good. She was straight back. The recovery that we showed.
Yeah. Did you notice the one she hit the loop, flipped her hair, and walked back? Did you see that? Did you see it though? I've seen this video so many times. It's just unbelievable. And she walked. But she walks most of the time. I don't know if you noticed the last ball. She hit it and looped it intentionally and ran back to the middle. I don't know if anyone caught that or not, but she is efficient and economical as a mover as you've ever seen. Linda, this is Courtney Rauscher's adopted sister. I don't know if you know that or not. That's Nora. Yeah, she actually quit playing. I used to teach her with 3 balls in my hand, not red, orange, green, 3 red balls. And this is, I taught her 2 lessons, I think, before this. And you can imagine what we worked on, getting the racket up on the forehand, changing the grip on the backhand side. But I show other video when she was 8, and it was unbelievable. But she played the same game tactically. She had a loop forehand with topspin. She had backhand grip was right. Her serve grip was a little bit off. But she played the exact same points. So I'm going to ask y'all this. Is there anything tactically on your list she can't do? And this is not right or wrong, again. Is there anything on your list she can't do? Tactical. Because on my, and this is where we got the big argument at the PTR. On my list, she's consistent. Would everyone agree with that? Did she move the opponent?
Yes.
Did she change what she did according to the position in the court? Pretty much. She utilized her strength. What about his weakness? She wore his backhand out, and Wardlaw would love her. She's waiting for a short ball that sits, and she's running to the forehand. Anytime she fades back, she intentionally goes high to the backhand. She only went, I think, 1 time cross court. I believe she does everything tactically at age 6. To me, this is a thing of beauty. I think this is the most wonderful thing about red, orange, green. This girl actually was 6. She was adopted from Poland at age 4. Her sister was a really good player, one of the best kids I've ever coached. She ended up with really bad wrist problems, had 4 surgeries. But she actually quit playing a couple years ago. Just broke my heart. I thought she was going to be one of the best kids ever, because you talk about a tough cookie. You grew up in a Polish orphanage. Your lunch is getting stolen on a daily basis, and you got to fend for yourself. She's the most incredible kid tactically I've ever seen. And I didn't teach her technically at first. We did a little bit, but I tried to work within her personality and all. So anyway, interesting stuff there. All right, so just to challenge you a little bit here. Not really challenge you, but this is one that's good discussion, I think. So we're going to go into technique. And I always joke about this. We shot red and orange video for the tennis channel, actually for the USPTA. And I know a lot of you watched it because it was on at 4 in the morning. And they showed it like 2 times and then buried it. But anyway, it was a show on, I did a show on red, like top 10 tips for red, and a show on orange. And actually, I think it's about to come out on video. But anyway, I took this from that. And this was our best red ball player that they had. I think he was 6, maybe 7. So we're going to identify the forehand technique, and we're going to verify, we're going to observe on court is where we're going to verify, or how. Their criteria we're looking at is quality. I want to check the quality. And then the conditions, actually, that's incorrect. It's an open environment, but we closed it down and just showed 2 shots of it. So it'd actually be open. All right, so anyway, it's the boy on this side. On this side of the court, there's a girl on the far side, but it's this boy here in the light blue. And we're going to watch this probably 3 times because he gets 2 different forehands. So this is technique. So again, what did you write down on your paper for how you're going to grade technique? And is he ticking off boxes? So again, it's just basically 2 forehands. First one. Second one. Again, back to the first one. And then to the second. All right. Anyone want to go down their checkoffs? Tell me what you think. You had to grade this kid. No one wants to tackle this one, do they?
The stances were good, preparation's great, actually.
Preparation was good?
Grip's okay.
Grip was okay? Yep. Okay. Was his backswing different on the 2 shots? Did you notice a difference? He had a static pause. He actually had a really poor unit turn on the first one. He went this way, dissociated his arm, the rest of his body. And the next one was a lot better, but he kept his racket up. But he also did this and had a static pause at the bottom. So it's tough to, there was one preparation on one end and on the other, and his stance was a little different on the 2. All right, past preparation, anything else that you had grading points like contact point, follow through and all that?
Just the use of 2 stances and 2 different follow throughs.
Yep, 2 stances, 2 different follow throughs. Why do you think he had 2 different stances and 2 different follow throughs?
Contact point.
Situation, right?
Contact point.
Contact point. So situation would be the ball's higher, right? He's pressed. The ball is shorter and lower, right? Okay. What's that? He loaded. He's a pretty good little bender. His legs, so I'd say his legs are pretty good. He's also got the body type, which makes it easier. He's not a long lever kid. Anything else you noticed? We have to delineate the 2 forehands, right? So, is this going to be? I was thinking the modern tennis. Was there 8 forehands or 7? Would you grade like 3 or 4 different forehands? Julio, what would you do with this? Would you do like a summary of it, or I mean, would it be a driven forehand you'd grade? It's tough. It's like, are you going to grade his loop falling back? His neutral. That's tough.
Before I go into the negative, I would go into the positives.
Yep.
And I like the fact that at that age, the first ball bounces deeper. He recognizes to absorb it, which is it's a world-class technique.
Yep.
Nobody's taught him that. He just did that by instinct. Second ball shorter. He kind of recognized that. Move forward, close the stand, didn't step across. Misjudge it a little bit. But overall, the foundation of what he's giving me is pretty good. I mean, I'll be excited.
For his age, pretty darn good.
Yeah, if that kid showed up and they're bringing it to me, I'll be excited. I'll be like, okay, let's start refining this stuff.
Yeah. So I guess the point again would be, there's a lot of positive on there, but they're 2 different forehands. So I'm not saying this to complicate it, but I am. Because I said I'm going simple to complex. Okay? So what I generally do is grade what I would call a rally ball. All right? Because if you're going to get complex, and you're going to have to get complex, So you talked earlier about the 3 areas over there. And we were talking about neutralizing, defense, and attack or something. We were talking about 3 zones over there. It could be 4 hands and 3 zones. But again, this is what you have to figure out, because you're going to have to create the environment, closed or open. You're going to have to identify it, verify it, and if it's external, meaning it's going to be published and given to parents and players, you have to justify it. And parents need to understand it. So again, I'm throwing this at you because you got to own this stuff, and you have to decide. Not bad at all. It isn't funny, Julio. I went straight to the negative after, but it was actually they mentioned the positive, so I had to throw out the negative.
And one thing that you just hit the nail on the head, we get caught up too often looking for one way to hit the forehand. There isn't one way to hit the forehand.
Absolutely.
It's depending upon the situation.
Absolutely. So my thing would be on him is I think he doesn't own his unit turn, because when he's absorbing, like you said, he gets disjointed with it, associated, whatever you want to say. And I think his follow-through is good because it was situational. It wouldn't bother me a bit. And then he's more through the ball in the second one because it's shorter. So I think you could set parameters in all 3 zones of the court, or however many zones you have, and grade him according to his take back. I mean, not universal, but it's going to be more compact and all. But if you don't have a good unit turn in all areas of the court, you don't have a good unit turn. But the follow-through, I'd have to say, needs to be situational and a contact point. So, yeah. All right, so here's another one to throw at you. I love this one. This is another one to get some good conversation. So we're going to identify agility, balance, coordination. How many of you heard Kirk's session earlier? Yeah, so you're going to grade kids physically. That's tough to do, right? Drop and give me 20. Let's see if you can do 20, you know? Are you going to do sway and the caterpillar and all? Like, is a push-up when you start at your feet and go to your knees, your hips, you know? That's hard to do. Again, how do you measure agility and balance? So that's what we're going to try to identify. We're going to verify it. We have a test. That's how we're going to verify it. What is the criteria? And I put a question mark. Are we going to use quality, quantity? I think in this one you can do both. And what are the conditions? Closed environment. So this comes from some LTA. That's the USTA of the UK, the Lawn Tennis Association. And this is their level 3 skills test, all right? And I've had some interesting comments about this one. The last time I showed it, someone said it looks like he's trying out for the circus. Let's say you work for the USTA or another governing body, and you're in charge of, God forbid, talent identification with 8-year-olds. And you're going to grade this out, and you're going to find the next great champion in the UK. I'm actually joking. Let's just say it's at your club, and you want to put this on there. As you mentioned, Mike, earlier, you had the physical realm. So let's think about how we're going to identify and verify. Is this quality? Quantity? What would you do? Can you do both? What would the quality be that you're measuring? What is the quantity that you're measuring? So let's start first with his hands and the racket. How would you grade what he's doing? If you could judge that, how would you grade what he's doing? Not is it good or bad, but what are you looking at if you did the skill? And it would start obviously simple, which would be, can you do it standing still? Then can you do it walking? Then can you go around something? Then you add multi-direction, all that. But just starting off with just the hands, what would you grade out with this that he did well? He hit it back and forth, right?
Consistent height.
Consistent height.
Of the ball. Yeah, I mean, it never really got executed.
Yeah, it didn't get crazy, did it?
He didn't lose control. I mean,
Yeah.
he kept
Pretty darn good.
I couldn't do that.
Yeah.
USB 2, I couldn't do what he did.
It's tough. I've tried it. You gotta work on it a little bit. Anyone else? Someone over here said something?
Yeah, when you kept it, within a reasonable ability to walk, so what more variation, how far you have to go.
Yeah. So that could be a measurement. The consistency of the height, I think we're all agreeing, right, in terms of the quality of it. Anyone notice how he was holding the racket? He had his grip set to where the rackets were facing inward. Whether that evolved or someone coached him to do that, I don't know, but that absolutely affects the quality because he needs to be inward because he's going from one to the other, right? So that's a tough one on quality. You could talk about the quality of the ball going up in the air, what his hands are doing. What about quantity? Just focusing on his hands. What would be a quantity thing that you could add? What's that? Yeah. So you kept it going for a certain amount of time. You could count drops. You know how many times he dropped it when he went through the course. What's something else you could do just with his hands, what he's doing, if you wanted to grade? What's that?
Soft hands.
His soft hands, and he definitely has some soft hands, right? Anything else that you could grade from a quantity standpoint?
Time to go through the questions.
Yeah, so he has time going through the course, but just with his hands again, it could be how many times does he drop. You could count how many times he exchanges through the course, right? So then getting to his feet, you've already touched upon some of it. You know, how fast can he get through the course? How fast can he get through the course with the number of exchanges, right? Did he hit the hurdle and knock it over? He stalled on the cone at the end a little bit, right? But it wasn't too bad, right? What else could you do with this? And I'm just throwing this out because if you're going to try to measure agility, balance, coordination, it's very difficult to do.
Consistency is a higher wall.
Yep.
Just as far as if it goes over his head, if it stays, you can judge if you put parameters on it as they do it, then they probably concentrate on that as well.
Yeah, you could say it can't go above his head. That could be another one. Anything else with it? Because this fascinates me, but again, if you're going to judge kids and bring this to scale and do a write-up, you can't just say he did really well and he looks good, but you know, you have to quantify and qualify. So anyway, interesting stuff. I thought that one was going to get more people fired up and then get the, why on earth would anybody do that? I don't know. I would make a bad comment about the LTA, but I won't.
All right.
I can tell you what. Didn't say anything. Didn't say anything, Mike. That was good. All right. What's that? They will have more Andy Murrays, though. They will, especially if they go to age 4. They'll be more likely to do it. All right. So, finalizing your competencies. So again, who is your audience? Okay. Are you going to write this for your pros and make it more extensive, or are you only going to write this so that you can give it to parents? All right, that is a key distinction. So you're going to do 2 or you're going to do 1. And I'm not slamming parents, but the bottom line is if a kid can understand it, usually a parent can. You got to write to both of them. Okay? If the kid can't understand it, you're in trouble. If the parent can't understand it, you're in trouble. Julio, did you have your hand up? I'm sorry.
Yeah, and take the time to do it for your pros too, because it'll be quite embarrassing if a parent or a kid happens to know more about the basis of your program than your pro.
One of the great things, and we didn't go down this path, I did the last couple of times, Julio has said, one of the great things about competencies is accountability with the pros in your program. It gets everyone accountable and everyone's on the same hymn sheet. That's one of the great things about it. And we'll talk a little bit more about the kids here in just a little bit. All right, so who is the audience? You got to decide on that. If there's multiple audiences, how will you publish and how often? How many of you put out a grade for the kids, your competencies, like every session, every 8 week? Did any of you do that 6 or 8 weeks? Because I know you had your hands raised. Does anyone do like once a month, be able to do something for the kids? Or is it usually longer than that? Anybody? Quarterly? If you do it frequently, it better not be too detailed, or you better have admin salaries or be working something out, because it definitely does take some time. My suggestion from everybody is keep it simple. I would say start off and do a fall and a spring. And I say that, some have a fall, winter, spring, but I would just start off 2 times during the school year. I think that's more than reasonable, okay? We do our program in 6-week segments, 6, 6, and 6 in the fall, 6, 6, 6 in the spring, and I would definitely not do every 6, unless it was a little easier, wasn't extensive, and it also goes with your staff. If you have a really committed staff and you got a couple of geeks that like to, spend a lot of time doing admin, great. I shouldn't say that, but that kind of mindset. All right, so how will you publish it? Are you going to email it? Are you going to do the grade and rely on the kid taking it home with them? And they're 6 or 7, and the chance with some of the boys, especially of getting it from the tennis court to the parking lot, is tough, right? So is it going to be an online form? You got to think about these things. Are you going to post it on the wall and publish it that way, where all the kids can see each other? Is that going to be motivation to people? Again, you got to figure this out and decide. I personally wouldn't touch that, but I know a lot of people that publish who's in what group, and they put it on a bulletin board. And if you have competencies with it, then you're publishing who passed the competencies. So again, you got to figure all these things out. How transparent do you want to be? Not to complicate it, but you just got to think about it. Are they progressive? Are they by age? What the heck do we mean by that? There's a lot of things with this. I look at, okay, is it an assumption that they're going to go red, keep going and go to orange, and then keep going and go to green? Well, what if the kid is 10 years old and comes to your program? They can't play red unless it's an in-house play day. So will you start them in the red competency, or will you start them in the orange competency or green? Again, I'm throwing this out because competitively, the 10-year-old in team, sanctioned, whatever, branded team tennis and tournaments, a 10-year-old can't play red. So the point I'm making is when I read your competency in orange, does it start off with basic, simple stuff that would be like red? Or does your top of your red then go to the bottom of orange? That's what I'm trying to get at. This is key because I see so many people that write competencies that don't, in my opinion, it's not about getting it right, but you have to tell parents what your policy is. So if any kid walks in your clinic and is brand new, above the age of 8, are they going red first? I don't know. You have to decide that. In ours, they're going to go red. I don't care if they're an adult. And they're going to go with the red competency. But I see a lot of people make this mistake in writing their competencies, and I think it's super important. Okay, so I'm just going to ask 2 minutes of questions, and then I'll take a couple minutes. Out of this hour and 20 minutes that we talked, what can you see are some of the benefits? If you could take the time, start simple, but take the time to do these. What do you see this would help? Just let's throw out some reasons why.
Dealing with parents who want their kids to move up. That's the biggest problem in face.
Would y'all say that's one of the biggest ones, dealing with parents who want their kids to move up? All right, what else could you see as a benefit?
Motivation.
Motivation for the kids
Giving
themselves?
them focus, especially for like consistency and things like that, as opposed to
Yep.
just trying to hit the killer shot. That, when they understand their parameters, they tend to focus better on it in training.
Yep. You're giving them something objective to work towards other than you just got to win, win, win. Anything else? I did talk earlier about in-house coach ed when I brought that up. It makes it real easy when you do coach ed, and also we talked about getting the pros on the same page. Huge.
It would be good for the pros to help kind of look at stuff during that time.
Gives the pros a purpose of what they're doing. Yep. They get more systematic. They get less focused because a lot of pros, unfortunately, are like kids. They get too focused on winning. Yep.
I think it allows you as a pro to advance your better players quickly without the justification, I guess, to the group or the other parents or what have you, because it is so structured that there's a reason that she's advancing and she's in this group, even though she's 12 years old, as opposed to, I think she's ready,
takes a lot of lessons from you and pays you a lot of money. The old view of why they moved. Yeah, so I guess transparency maybe. How does it's pretty wide open, right? This is why we did it. Anyone else? Still a few more. Mike?
I actually think that a lot of those technical competencies are difficult to teach in a group setting. So if a parent wants Johnny to have all of those technical competencies, they're really gonna have to do the lesson. So from a self-interested point, it could lead to private lessons. I mean, because those USTA videos, there are not too many 7-year-olds that just walk in.
Did everybody hear that? The technical side may be, because it's difficult a lot of times in a group lesson to address some of those, it may actually promote private. Mike, I'm going to do Julio, and then Mike, go ahead, Julio.
Actually, I used to think that way until I thought of karate. Okay, kids advance based on the quality of their movements. It's not because they beat each other. And when you go into a karate class, you have one instructor up front, and usually 30, 40 kids lined up doing it. If you come up with your own technical, tactical, and whatever it is system that you're going to have, and you put steps to it, and you teach it to your staff, you can put 30 kids out there at the same time, and you say step 1, and they all gotta do step 1, and they know what step 1 is. And step 2, so I used to think that, yes, but you can get a lot of good technical development work in group settings, but you have to break it down where the ball's not involved. It's an evolution to involve the ball in the techniques that they're trying to do.
And I think what you're getting at, Julio, is if you get all of your pros on the same page, and it's becoming more of a system, and obviously different kids are different, are wired differently and all that, but it makes it so much easier. Mike, you did have your hand earlier.
Right. Sure, you're not putting on.
Go ahead, fire away.
One of the things is to make sure you share all the competencies, even though the kid might only be on one level. So you have to share the whole map, the whole destination from 6 to 10, because then it really makes you look like you know exactly what you're doing. Often you can just share the one set of competencies, they go, oh yeah, well, then you go, oh yeah, but look, there's all of these competencies, it's a pathway. Then actually people are much more, and a couple of times people have said to me, oh wow, you really know what you're doing, don't you? So, yeah, that's why you pay me money. Okay, so share the whole thing. And then the other one is a little question, but not an answer, but a question that maybe we could answer tomorrow. If a kid wants to be a really serious tennis player, does that mean they move faster through the competencies? Or does that mean they learn more at each level? Think about it overnight. Yeah.
Thanks, Mike. Absolutely. Again, you got to have the roadmap. I'll take one more, and then I had a comment about competition, because that's what I do for a living. Was there someone else that's had a, yes?
It gives the children opportunities, an evaluation, managing their self-perception. You know, they might think I'm progressing, then when they see the evaluation, they'll say, oh, okay.
Yep.
And we're all guilty of adults and thinking we'll look like X and we'll play.
Yeah, do you think some of that too is they value the winning portion, and so they could be winning more, but actually not doing it the right way as well? Yeah. So this is a great segue. One of the things that you're going to hear about is USD alignment, junior alignment. Kirk talked about it this morning. Our numbers are anemic in competition. But what we'd like to see you do, because we have such a broad, group of 17 sections in America, and you're one, and it's all over the place. And so in the South, there are no progression or advancement rules in place like there are in other sections. So for example, if your parent doesn't like red, orange, green, they just go to yellow in the 12s, and they can play, right? Because we're a capitalist society, we can enter anything we want. We're actually not. It depends on where you are. Other sections say no. There's an age rule in Texas. Midwest has adopted one now. We have to play X amount of tournaments. So the governing body, whatever it is, national governing body, section, or state, can make rules, right? But even if you go to that and it says after 6 tournaments you can leave orange and go to green, you as a pro, we're relying on you to educate the parents to say, you don't have a continental grip on your serve, we're not going to green. But that's up to you to set these competencies. So what my ask is is that you associate your competencies with the competitive structure, and you make the decision. And I get it, trust me, I understand, because I still live in Georgia. You know, I was in 06, 07 trying to hold my kids back, but there was no competition, and we had to play in-house, and finally, my best 9-year-old just went to yellow. And now it's so much better. But anyway, again, your best 9 can say to hell with it and get out of orange, get out of green, and go to yellow. So my big ask is that you develop the skill and that you pair it with the competitive side of things. And you also put that in writing in terms of your expectations for the parents. And I think you have the whole puzzle right there. All right, look, I'm over time and I got started late. Thank y'all very much. I'm gonna stay around a little bit if you have any questions.